When a teenage girl was stopped from taking her first-class seat, the flight crew assumed she didn't belong. But what they didn't know was who her father was, and when he arrived, everything changed. Watch until the end to see how this incredible story unfolds, and let us know what time you're watching today. The bustling atmosphere of the airport was alive with energy. The sound of rolling luggage, announcements echoing overhead, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee from nearby kiosks filled the air. Travelers moved with purpose, navigating through security and eagerly awaiting their flights. Among them was Amara Johnson, a 16-year-old with bright eyes and an air of quiet confidence. She walked through the terminal, her carry-on bag in tow, her heart racing with anticipation. Her father, James Johnson, had surprised her with a first-class ticket for her birthday, a gift she had earned after months of hard work and school achievements. It was her first time flying in such luxury, and the thought of spacious seats, gourmet meals, and premium treatment filled her with excitement. As she stood in line at the gate, Amara eagerly checked her boarding pass, her phone buzzing with a message from her dad. "Enjoy your first-class experience, sweetheart. You've earned it." Amara smiled, typing a quick reply, her heart swelling with pride. She felt like a young adult stepping into a new world, a world that had once seemed out of reach. But little did she know, her excitement was about to turn into an unexpected confrontation that would challenge her sense of belonging. Amara's heart skipped a beat as she approached the first-class section of the plane, ready to settle into her seat. But as she reached her row, a flight attendant stopped her in her tracks. What could possibly go wrong? Amara thought, holding up her boarding pass. "This is my seat," she said politely, her voice steady despite the unease rising in her chest. The flight attendant, Stephanie, barely glanced at the ticket before crossing her arms. "Miss, first-class seats are assigned to passengers with premium tickets. If you don't have the correct boarding pass, I'll need you to return to your assigned section." Amara's cheeks flushed as she looked at the ticket again. "But this is my assigned section. My dad bought this seat for me." Stephanie's lips curled into a skeptical smile. "Your dad bought it," she repeated, her tone dripping with doubt.
"Right.
"Why don't we double-check with the gate agent?" Nearby passengers began to glance over, their whispers growing louder. A man in a suit raised an eyebrow, while a woman across the aisle gave Amara a sympathetic look. Amara's heart pounded as she stammered, "I don't understand." "This is my ticket." Stephanie sighed dramatically. "Fine, sit for now. But I'll be verifying this shortly. If there's a mistake, you'll need to move." Amara nodded, her throat tight, as she slipped into the seat. She could feel the weight of the stairs around her, the humiliation bubbling under the surface. Stephanie walked off, but Amara's relief was short-lived. What if they really forced her to leave? Amara sat in her assigned seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as the whispers of nearby passengers grew louder. She could feel their eyes on her, some curious, others openly judgmental. The sting of Stephanie's earlier words lingered, and Amara struggled to hold back her frustration. She replayed the scene in her mind, the dismissive tone, the skepticism, the assumption that she didn't belong. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was infuriating. All she wanted was to enjoy the first-class experience her father had gifted her, but instead, she was made to feel like an imposter in a space she had every right to be in. Amara reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over her dad's number. She thought about calling him, but a part of her hesitated. Her father had always told her to stand tall in the face of challenges, to handle situations with grace and confidence. "You belong wherever you choose to be," he would say. Those words echoed in her mind now, giving her the strength to breathe deeply and stay calm. Looking around the cabin, Amara noticed the range of expressions from her fellow passengers. Some offered sympathetic glances, while others wore subtle smirks that only added to her discomfort. She wanted to explain herself, to shout that she had earned her seat just as much as anyone else here. Instead, she sat upright, lifted her chin slightly, and decided to wait. She trusted her father's wisdom and believed in her own worth. If the flight attendant wanted to question her place, then she would let her father's actions speak louder than her own words. But as the moments dragged on, Amara wondered if staying silent was the right choice. What if things spiraled further before her dad arrived? The tension in the cabin was thick as Stephanie returned to Amara's row, this time accompanied by the gate agent. The flight attendant's expression remained skeptical, while the gate agent glanced nervously between Amara and the boarding pass in her hand. "Miss," Stephanie began, her tone clipped, "we've reviewed your ticket," and, before she could finish, the cabin door opened and James Johnson stepped onto the plane. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit and carrying an air of authority, his presence immediately caught everyone's attention. He scanned the cabin, his sharp eyes landing on Amara. The moment their gazes met, her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she offered him a faint, relieved smile. James walked purposefully down the aisle, his tall frame exuding confidence. Stephanie turned toward him, her irritation momentarily giving way to confusion. "Sir, we're just handling a seating issue here," she said, forcing a polite tone. James didn't slow his stride. "A seating issue?" he repeated, his voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the murmurs around him. "With my daughters?" Stephanie blinked, her mouth opening and closing as she processed his words. "Your daughter," she echoed weakly. James stopped beside Amara, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder before turning to face Stephanie and the gate agent. "Yes, my daughter. And I'd like to know why she's being questioned about her seat, especially when her boarding pass clearly states she belongs here." The manager escorted Stephanie to the back, leaving the cabin in an uneasy quiet. Passengers exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of shock and awkward embarrassment. Some murmured among themselves, while others avoided eye contact altogether, as if grappling with their own complicity in silently observing the earlier confrontation. James turned to Amara, his expression softening. He crouched slightly to meet her gaze at eye level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Amara nodded, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm fine, Dad. But why does this always happen? Why do people assume?" James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Because some people don't see beyond their own biases. But today they learned that assumptions have consequences. And more importantly, you showed them what it means to handle a situation with grace." As he stood up, James addressed the cabin, his voice calm but deliberate. "To everyone here, let this be a reminder. The next time you see someone, don't assume you know their story based on how they look or what you think you know. Every person deserves respect, whether they're my daughter, a stranger, or anyone else." The cabin fell silent as his words settled over the passengers. A man in a tailored suit across the aisle cleared his throat, then spoke hesitantly. "Mr. Johnson, I just want to say,
I'm sorry.
We all should have spoken up earlier." A woman in the row ahead of Amara chimed in, her tone genuine. "She's lucky to have a father like you. And for what it's worth, she handled herself beautifully." As the plane soared through the sky, Amara gazed out the window, watching the clouds drift past. The tension of the earlier confrontation was fading, replaced by a sense of quiet pride. She turned to her father, who was seated beside her, his posture relaxed but his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for standing up for me, Dad," she said softly. James smiled, his voice warm but firm. "I'll always stand up for you, Amara. But you stood up for yourself first, and that's what I'm most proud of. You didn't let them shake you." Amara nodded, her confidence growing with his words. "I just wish people didn't judge so quickly." James leaned forward slightly, his tone carrying the weight of years of wisdom. "People will judge, no matter what. It's not right, but it's the reality. What matters is how you respond. Every time you rise above it, every time you demand the respect you deserve, you're teaching the world to be better." As the flight attendant from another section approached, she placed a fresh glass of sparkling water on Amara's tray with a kind smile. "From the crew, with our sincerest apologies," she said, her voice genuine. Amara glanced at her dad, who nodded approvingly. She sipped the water, letting the moment of vindication sink in. James leaned back in his seat, glancing at his daughter. "Remember, Amara, you belong wherever you choose to be. And no one has the right to make you feel otherwise."